is a major obstacle. I even tend to say maybe that major obstacle. This was very clear in the morning session in this very interesting discussion about the capacity building. Again and again, we were coming back to the topic of financing. And I really do believe that this round now with expert speaker panelists maybe can help us a bit more to find ways to answer the questions where to get funding, how to get funding, how to do it right, to learn from each other with best practices. I said we have an interesting group of speakers. The first in the row is Mnikeli Ndabambi from SOFF here in South Africa. Where is he? I see Mnikeli coming. He is the executive for the technology, the executive for infrastructure and information systems here at the South African Weather Service. Mnikeli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning once more. I hope my voice still reflects that is my voice. I'm a bit fluish today. So here I'm presenting on behalf of SOFF. This is a demonstration of a collaboration coordinated well by WMO. Also, we have the private sector playing a role. And then the chairperson said we are unbundling the bureaucracy that was referred to this morning. So this is about international agreement on the mandatory basic weather and climate observations. And then I will demonstrate also how we are addressing the gaps that have been discussed this morning. 193 countries and territories of the World Meteorological Congress established in 2021, they came up to set the minimum set observation that all countries must generate internationally, exchange as agreed upon. So in our terms, we simply refer to GBON, which means the Global Basic Observation or Observing Network. So when you hear GBON, it's about Global Observing Networks. So while GBON compliance is mandatory, major data and capacity gaps exist, more especially in most developing countries, and I will demonstrate that. And then they are hampering the actions that we want to take forward as we address the impact of climate change and variability. So this shows the gaps. If you look at the red, so if I know to operate this one.
No.
Okay, but you can see there. So if you are seeing the red, is the gaps, and then you can see in Africa that mostly is in the red. And then if you see the white, it means that we are meeting the minimum requirements of GBON. And then the blue, it means we are exceeding the GBON requirements. At least we've got some in Africa, Malawi, and Morocco in the blue. And then what is important is that you know that we are talking here about availability because this is a phased-in approach. So in terms of monitoring the quality, it's not yet in the GBON monitoring tool. So this is just about the availability. So SOFF then, which is the new United Nations Fund on Systematic Observation, it provides financial assistance to generate, exchange, and sustain basic observations on sustainable basis in terms of now global public good and financing mechanism. So this concept, it was financing or financial assistance we've been getting, but the question is, has it been sustainable? You find that the infrastructure has been bought and then it's sitting in South Africa. It's not functioning, or it functions for a limited period because there is no sustainability. So this approach is trying to bring about sustainability. So we advocate peer-to-peer technical assistance. Currently is provided by Met offices from 28 countries. So we term this training arrangements, because working together, and then there's a two-way continuous communication as well to take into account country level states as well. So this other bulletin is showing the speed and scale of delivery. So since March 2023, 60 countries supported about 74 million US dollars that have been provided. And then foundational element and delivery vehicle for the United Early Warning for All initiatives as announced by UNSG is basically supported by this initiative. The demand is quite high, and I said on behalf of SOFF. So if colleagues have got questions why I did not get the funding, I hope the SOFF Secretariat will assist to answer that, because the demand is quite high, which is also encouraging. So 101 countries have requested the SOFF support. So this demonstrates the value chain, which starts from the observation and also international exchange of observations. We have just approved in the WMO the data policy and the global numerical weather prediction model, which need the data as an input in order to improve on the quality and also on the resolution. And then you come down in your national med service, your data processing, and then the forecasting, your impact-based warnings, they get produced, and then the delivery and dissemination of those weather and climate services, so that effective decision and appropriate action can be taken. And I was pleased to hear this morning also the talk about the importance of the information reaching those, and then those that receive that information are able to take the proper action, so that the information is useful to the end user. And then SOFF phases, it starts with the readiness phase. This phase, we've learned a lot as a peer advisor from this phase. One of the things that we have learned is that you've got the information in the WMO databases, but to get the reality of what is happening is when the technical people go and visit the country. Some of the feedback, for example, was that you can see the station is 10 kilometers away from the med service, but the actual traveling to get to that station will take more than an hour or even 2 hours because of the conditions, and also some of the technical gaps that you get at the station. So that approach of having the people working with that particular country visiting physically, it has assisted a lot, and also it gave an information that the planned time is not realistic sometimes until you physically go there and experience it yourself. So SOFF funding for peer advisory services to support the countries in developing these products. So that is your readiness. And then your investment phase, which look now at the outcomes of those activities in the readiness. And then it provides a grant for the implementation of the G1, and then there's a national contribution plan that must be developed. And then as you develop the national contribution plan, there must be that continuous interaction, continuous exchange and consultation, including consultation with the Secretariat. And then you've got your compliance phase, where SOFF provides annual results-based payments for G1. Remember, when you are giving out finances, I think this morning we are also talking about how you propose to the World Bank in a manner that is going to be accepted, taking into account all those requirements. So it's more or less the same here. So as I indicated earlier on, that we've got 28 peer advisor countries and non-implementing entities, 18 steering committee members, and then 17 advisory board members. So you can see that all these groups, they dedicate their time and also trying to make sure that this program, it is sustainable. So in terms of South African Weather Service as a peer advisor in SOFF, so we've got 3 countries, Mauritius, Mozambique, my friend is here, was even talking our term Ubuntu, which he likes so much, and then Seychelles as well. And then there's also encouragement of partner advisor. So at this moment, we've got India, so we're still establishing momentum of that partner advisor role from India. And then the implementing entities, and then you've got your budget readiness phase. So if you look now at the budget investment phase, it's only Mozambique, the PR is here, that has reached in that stage. So that means with Mozambique, we are a bit advanced. Then the last column is showing G1 stations reporting. So, and then in terms of South African Weather Service as an advice, there has been a preparatory activities so that we work towards getting the funding, working closely with the INAM, and also there was a World Food Program that was part of this, and also the implementing entity. Then after that, those engagement, then there was a draft of funding proposal for Mozambique, as we have seen in the previous slide, that draft proposal succeeded. Then the SOFF operational guidance handbook, which was the reference material during this process, really assisted the team. So the draft funding proposal was assessed both by the Met Service in Mozambique and also by the peer advisor executives in the South African Weather Service. A lot of interaction and interrogating the information and giving input and enhancement. My PR is here, can also attest to that. Then you come to the development of SOFF G1 readiness phase outcome now. After all those visits, after all those identified additional needs that were not obvious before, then 2 missions were undertaken to Mozambique and 1 to the Seychelles so far in the preparation for SOFF G1 readiness phase outcome. So during the G1 national gap analysis, there has been some observations made. Apologies for this. So although we've got the observation systems that are deployed nationally, we observe that some are not registered in the postcard service. And then some are also not sharing in terms of the data communication internationally. And some were not meeting the required minimum standard as per the WMO guidance in terms of YBOS, and some were silent. So then the peer advisor now is currently preparing a mission for Mauritius. Some of the technical colleagues that will be going there, and that also went to Mozambique, also in this meeting, if you wanted to have further discussions later on. So development of SOFF G1 readiness phase. So during this phase, as I indicated, the national contribution plan was developed. And then as we developed that plan, we observed that there are legislative mandates in place for the Met services. And then also the strategy for meteorological service are not adequately funded to meet the national observation needs. I think this was also part of the discussion this morning. And then hydrology, you find that is sitting in another ministry, and then meteorology in other ministry. But in some places, you've got MOU in place for the observation network maintenance and data sharing. So the country hydromet diagnostic report was considered not essential during the development of the funding proposal for Mozambique, for example. However, it was deemed a requirement at a later stage of readiness phase. So the funding proposal and the assignment letter of agreement were amended so that they can address this requirement. So in terms of coordination with the SOFF implementing entities and the role of South African Weather Service as a peer advisor during the investment phase. So the investment phase addresses three key outputs, namely the national consultations, including the civil society organization and other relevant stakeholders that had to be conducted. Secondly, the Met Service institutional capacity required to operate the GBON network developed. And then thirdly, the Met Service human capacity required to operate the GBON network also developed. Please note that the implementing entity with the support of the peer advisor is expected to monitor the implementation of the investment phase following an output-based approach. So this activity is also outlined in the investment proposal as well. So coordination with SOFF with implementing entities and also with the role of the peer advisor. Again, continuing the GBON infrastructure is new and improved land-based stations and relevant equipment, ICT systems, data management system, and standard operation practices that need to be in place, and they were put in place. New and improved upper stations and related equipment, ICT system, data management system, and standard operating practices also in place. I know that there's a lot to be done in terms of the data management system. Sometimes you find that we're still in the continent using some legacy systems. So sustained compliance with GBON requirements, GBON led base stations, commissioning period completed, country-specific standard costs for operation and maintenance established, and data sharing verified by the World Meteorological Organization Technical Authority. GBON upper air station commissioning period also completed, country-specific standard costs for operation and maintenance established, and data sharing verified also by the WMO Technical Authority. So in a nutshell, I hope I'm still within the time, but during the breaks, we can engage more. There's also colleagues that are here in the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mnikeli, for this very interesting presentation. So speaking of myself, there was a lot of new insights. I was not aware how far SOFF is already advanced. So in terms of number of countries, we have already got funding, and of the 101 countries who are on the list to receive the funding. So this was new for me, and I appreciate very much the practical experiences, also mentioning the challenges. So highly interesting presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions and comments now, but I would like to park this for the Q&A session, which is then immediately after the round of presentations. Now, I think I need your support in reaching in Dr. Pedro Basabe, who is the Senior Advisor at Cruise Secretariat, as he is joining remotely.
Can you hear us, Pedro?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Would you like to share your screen for me?
I am trying to share, yes. Okay. Can you see?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Let me-
Thank you.
Wait a minute, let me just make you see?
I think we're in speaker view. Perhaps go to the previous view.
We see your screen also with the small slides at the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's not in the full presentation, but
We can see the small ones at the bottom. Oh, are you there? Can you hear us, Pedro? Oh. Please. Pedro, can you hear us? Moyenda, are you available, seeing as we've just lost Pedro's connection there? I think we will
should
try.
change the order. now.
Yeah. Oh,
Is Moyenda available?
Can you see?
No.
oh, okay, we have Pedro back. Okay, we have Pedro back.
Then
Please,
you will-
maybe Kathy, you can just project the presentation, maybe it will be easier.
Sure, 1 second.
Thanks.
Um, it's a way to do this, unfortunately.
Or you, okay. You manage?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just getting your presentation up. Okay. Let me share my screen now.
Okay, so full screen, please. Okay, thank you, for inviting us from Barisiam to this very important symposium, Hydromed Africa. Good day, good morning in your place, ladies and gentlemen. So we are very pleased to inform about cruise. I think you are quite familiar with this funding mechanism, but I will update you on several issues. So as you can see, so now we have 13 cruise members, which it means 13 donors, 13 contributing members. And we continue with the 3 implementing partners, the WMO, UNDRR, and the World Bank, GFDRR, and now they are also prospective implementing partners with ITU and IFRC. Next, please. So this presentation will focus in 3 points. So now an overview and the procedure that in order to get the financing. The second one, more in detail, the different modalities for financing and how this gets operationalized. And finally, some information on progress and results. Next, please. Okay, an overview. So as you may recall, it is a funding mechanism instituted at the COP21 in Paris in 2015 in order to increase the access to multi-hazard early warning systems, to support the implementation of the SENDAP Target G in LDCs and SITs. Currently, we are also serving to operationalize the early warning for all, and of course, we have very, very substantive collaboration and interaction with SOFF, for example. Cruise has as a governance and a steering committee composed by the contributing members, now 13. There it is decision-making body, which also ensure the coordination, the revision of projects and approval. So that it is something that we need to bear in mind, because there is also that you have the contact with different development partners, also immediately to have this in mind in order maybe to propose progress through the implementing partners. This committee meets twice a year. So far, more or less 280 million people benefit on the different type of assistance. thanks to, better prediction of extreme weather forecasting and early warning system, that it is mostly per year, the statistics that we have. So far, it has been contributed to with over 140 millions for 12 country and 8 regional projects through the implementing partners, as mentioned previously. And as exist 3 funding mechanisms that I will inform you more in details. So but just to bear in mind, multi-year projects, accelerated support window, and with the GCF, the SAP in order to scale up funding. And the focus, as you may recall, it is delivering at a scale and leveraging, focus also on vulnerable and fragile states to have country ownerships and also to ensure the sustainability of investments. Next. Okay, how the countries can benefit from cruise funding. There are several principles we can say. One, it is the national and local multi-hazard early warning system are the priorities in the country. Second, that the early warning service deliver and an accessible early warning system to all. And finally, also to consider people-centered gender response principles and to promote, by the way, private sector engagement. That was, I'm very pleased to also to participate. The cruise now, they have operational procedures for private sector engagement. And there it is the link with the early warning system. So with UNDRR, in order to move to the we can say the traditional warnings to impact-based warning with WMO in order to try to maintain the capacities to monitor, analyze and predict hazards, with ITU to communicate and to have common alerting protocols, and with IFRC to move towards preparedness and in particular anticipatory action plans. As you know, they are dealing with this with several partners, RIP and different other networks. Next. That maybe is the most important slide for this conversation. So the 3 modalities. One, it is what we call national and regional multi-year projects. This has been happening since 2016. So there are either national projects that more or less last 3 and 5 years, and more or less are the resources for $3 and $5 million per country. Regional projects that are more or less last 5 to 7 years, and they are more or less allocated between $5 and $7 million. Who is eligible for this? All of the eligible LDCs and seats, and the submission is through the implementing partners. The second one, it is a new since 2 years ago, which is accelerated support window. These are for small activities that the country may need, and even, for example, to have resources for a big project proposal. It goes until $250,000 US for 12 months. The approval, it is less than 3-4 months. And who are eligible are, again, the same ODA eligible LDCs and seats, and the submission could be directly from countries or through the implementing partners with the need, of course, an endorsement by the country, a letter. And number 3, it is even more, it is the scaling up, that it is a framework that was approved, developed and approved with the GCF, is a simplified approval process that was since last year, more or less, and that it is to scale up until 25 million per project, either country or regional project. So it's a long-term project. And this goes, of course, through the GCA procedures. Currently, there are several countries applying for that. So that it is also one of the principles is that to those countries who has been completed the cruise project in a successful way. So bear in mind these 3 modalities of funding that are available for countries, in particular through the implementing partners and or through the GCF. Next. So just to let you know that cruise has been growing since the beginning and more or less on a speed between 10-20% per year, Currently, more than 140 millions has been allocated, and we are foreseeing even to go until 155 for next year. So that you have in the different colors, the different support that we have from the different members, I mean the contributing partners. All this information is available in our in the cruise annual report. Next. So just to have you an idea where we stand on those projects, previously also was informing about the number of projects. What you can see here are more or less the cruise has been assisting since 2016, 78 LDCs and seats. Then you have but concrete projects being implemented, 12 country projects, you have the names there, and 8 regional projects, so more or less zooming 76 countries. And you can see there are 5 regional projects in Africa, covering West Africa, 16 countries, 19, by the way, some of them are repeating in other regional projects, Southwest Indian Ocean, including Comoros, Madagascar, Mauricio, Seychelles, Mozambique, the Horn of Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa. So the most important part of the cruise implementation through, and maybe my colleague from WMO will inform more, it has been in Africa. We have also a regional project in the Pacific, 15 small island states, and in the Caribbean, 19 also small island states, and also the neighboring countries. So that is in a nutshell, if we can say when it comes to multi-year countries that it has been implementing since 2016. Next. Then you have more or less the same, but in an overview in the whole, in a world map. Then you can see that the focus has been mostly in Africa, as mentioned. And here you have a summary of what has been done. So 8 regional projects, 12 countries, as mentioned. The accelerated support window, we have currently 8. And with the GCF simplified approval process, more or less 9, which are more in the pipeline. Yeah, so bear in mind this. Concrete information, I mean, we are finalizing the annual reports, and all of this information will be updated in the next annual report. The 2022 is available. So you can see that covers from the Caribbean, Africa, Southeast Asia, Asia, and the Pacific. Next. Now, if we zoom in Africa, then you have what happens in Africa, 6 multi-year national projects, as mentioned previously, 5 multi-year regional projects. And here, for example, is an example of Central Africa regional project from 2022 to 2026. And some of the results that I assume also my colleague from WMO will inform more, but just to let you know that, for example, 3 hazards, floods, drought, and severe weather, with a stronger forecasting and warning availability has been successfully achieved. 36 regional and national institutions and organizations supported by cruise in capacity development, and several countries, they have already common alerting protocols to issue warnings in a systematic way. You have the list of countries that has been more or less 11, just in Central Africa, but as mentioned previously, there are in East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, the Horn of Africa, etc. Next. And now that it is the last, my last slide, so just now we are measuring the success. So this, there was a requirement from the donors, and now we have a set of metrics. Now we call the monitoring, evaluation, and accountability and learning meal framework. And we have now specific indicators, and we go one by one to see what we are achieving, and of course, to try to ensure the sustainability. All of this links to the international agreements, I mean, to the SDGs, to the Sendai framework for DRR, and of course, it contributes also to the Paris Climate Agreement. As mentioned, we are also supporting and working closely with SOFF and the early warning for all, and this has been also shared with them, and with the early warning for all also there. We are working closely for a monitoring system, including the maturity index. Next one, please. So thank you very much for your attention. Then you have my email address, my name, and we are very pleased, to further exchange with you and ready for the panel discussion or questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for this very interesting and informative presentation. We will follow on with two more presentations before we go into the discussion round to the Q&As. I hope you are still available online. Is Moyenda remotely?
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's ready
again, it's up to you. Moyenda Chaponda is the WMO from the WMO Development Partnership. He is the partnership officer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
And can you see my presentation as well?
Yeah, could you just put it in full screen for me? Perfect.
Okay,
Brilliant,
So-
thank you.
thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to Verizion for the invitation to present today. My name is Moyenda Chaponda, a Development Partnerships Officer based at the WMO headquarters in Geneva. And my presentation today will focus on a guidance document that we are developing on enhancing the role of national meteorological and hydrological services in mobilizing climate finance. So here there's really more focus on not just WMO in accessing climate finance, but seeing how we can help support our members in positioning themselves to access the climate finance that is out there. And so I will take you through my presentation. So since 2018, WMO and the Green Climate Fund have collaborated on producing guidance on incorporating climate science into decision-making. This was aimed at assisting especially LDCs and SIDS, along with project proponents, development partners, to strengthen the climate science basis for policies, plans, and investments. I think we've heard about the climate rationale, and so this is what we were working with the GCF since 2018. This exposed the stakeholders to various methods, tools, and data necessary for climate science information into climate action, and has increased support for effective investments. The forthcoming guidance note that we are developing builds on the successes and lessons learned to further strengthen stakeholders' capacity in accessing, synthesizing, and incorporating this climate science into climate action. And recognizing the pivotal role that NMHSs play in mobilizing climate finance, the goal here is to foster both national development and institutional growth. The Met services assume this crucial role. It not only supports their countries, but also increases the likelihood of securing funding for their own institutional development. So I think we understand that NMHS's data, knowledge, and expertise are essential for informing climate-related national strategies, processes, and investments, and must be acknowledged and empowered to effectively fulfill this role. This places the NMHS at the center of climate change decision-making and as a key enabler for accessing climate finance. So to support this position, as I mentioned, this guidance note that we are developing focuses on 4 primary objectives: to provide comprehensive insights into climate finance actors and processes at the national level, to highlight climate finance decision-making principles and NMHS's role as a key driver in mobilizing. Number 3, identify opportunities for collaboration with funding agencies and national stakeholders to propose projects. And the 4th is to outline strategies for empowering NMHSs through initiatives focused on vision setting, strategy development, and enhanced agency perception for resource mobilization for both at the country's climate ambitions. So I will take you through more or less the the outline of the guidance document and what is included in there. I won't get into too much of the detail, but it just gives an overview of the various chapters we have in this guidance document. And it's still in a draft version. We are working with a consultant and various partners to finalize this, and this would be available in the near future. So this is just a quick overview of climate finance, the accessing of that climate finance and the catalytic impact of that, and provides an overview of the architecture, the global architecture of finance. As you can see, it's quite complex. I think whenever we show this, it really provides that comprehensive overview of how many actors are involved in this process, from the contributors to the bilateral institutions to the multilateral institutions as well, the UNFCCC financial mechanisms, the multilateral development banks. And so as you can see, there's quite an array of various institutions that are involved in here. And navigating through this can be very difficult. It's a challenging and a complex process. So what we're trying to do is to help NMHSs in terms of guiding through this process. So we, as mentioned, we provide information on what is climate finance. I think everyone is aware of that and how to access that. And I've just already mentioned that they are including the UNFCCC mechanisms such as the Adaptation Fund, Global Environment Facility, the GCF, the multilateral development banks, UN agencies, and bilateral aid agencies. Specific programs have been mentioned. I think we've already had presentations from Cruz and SOFF. You also have the Climate Investment Fund that are all targeting the climate finance that is out there. Funding is expected to catalyze further financial resources, including from national budgets, private sector, and other donors and funders. And some of the key actors in this mobilization of climate funds, as mentioned, there's multiple actors, but you have the NMHSs, project components, sector experts, and other stakeholders who are playing an essential role. Key amongst those in country are the national designated authorities who provide that strategic oversight and coordination. So here I've just provided the list of the dedicated climate finance that are out there, but highlighting four that WMO normally engages with. As mentioned, there's SOFF and Cruz. We also have the GCF, in which the climate science into climate action is based on, and that collaborative partnership is there. A key amongst those is also the Adaptation Fund, who support climate adaptation projects in developing countries vulnerable to the climate change impacts. WMO is currently accredited with the Adaptation Fund, and we use the Adaptation Fund to better support our members. We play the role as the implementing entity in most of the projects that we have. We currently have 3 ongoing projects. We have about 9 or 10 in the pipeline across all regions. And the process in which we work with the Adaptation Fund is that normally the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services are the executing entity for these projects. And so the Secretariat puts together the pipeline projects, working with the NMHSs to formulate the project. And most of these are regional projects and can access funding up to 14 million for those regional projects. In terms of the national planning process, the NMHSs play a crucial role in providing that data and information and analysis for climate-related planning and decision-making. This involves the various strategies in terms of the NDCs, the NAPs, the disaster risk management plans, and climate investment plans. There's a need for close coordination between the NMHSs and the government agencies, ensuring that enhancing the delivery and timely of the credible climate services. WMO analysis indicates the critical role of the NMHSs in the national climate action planning and the insights and inputs that are essential for achieving these national strategies and priorities. Just to point out one element in terms of the national process and stakeholder engagement, that this should follow a stepwise approach that involves identifying the impacts, proposing interventions, understanding the available resources, and determining the partners for mobilizing the resources. So a key part of this guidance document is the role of the NMHSs. And the NMHS, as mentioned, should be at the center of the climate change decision-making and be a key enabler of climate and development finance mobilization in a country. The NMHS's knowledge and expertise is critically required to feed into climate-related national process strategies and investments. And part of this is that the NMHS often are the only national agency with the hydrometeorological observations, historical records, data, knowledge, and expertise needed for climate investment planning and effective decision-making. They play a key role of exhibiting the expertise and providing that sound scientific basis that is needed for the climate investment decision-making at the national level. But in order for this to become a reality, there needs to be a shifting of the perception of the NMHSs for them to be seen as a key driver in mobilizing the climate and development finance, contributing to the identification and design of climate investments, and ensuring resilience and sustainability, sustainable growth. And this guidance document and the work with the WMO is to provide this opportunity to try and shift this perception of the NMHS within the national planning process. So the value of the NMHS's inputs for, climate finance and mobilization. So as I've mentioned, the climate science basis is seen as a key element for any climate investments that are being made, and donors may be hesitant at times to finance projects as climate action without that solid underpinning of climate science, and being able to show the link between the current or expected climate variation and the investment's ability to address any potential impacts from that. And so that climate science data and information and analysis is key, and is the bridge that is key for that process, methodological process of establishing a climate science basis needed for that climate action. And so underpinning with that necessary data and information of where climate impacts are being felt, may be experienced in the future, and what response measures should be developed as investments to address these impacts. And so the last slide, again, as part of this guidance document, there's a main section on demonstrating the leadership that is required for this shifting of the perception, and the empowerment of NMHSs as being central to the national level decision-making. We see the leadership element as a critical part in that. The value that the NMHSs can provide is an internal factor that can only be realized with that proper strategic intent. And the NMHSs need that strong visionary leaders who see the big picture and think strategically to bring about those innovative changes to develop institutional and infrastructural capacity to sustain it. Demonstrating the leadership involves a vision that secures the buy-in at all levels of the agency, including the relevant line ministries, a strategy that is deliberate in expanding the NMHS's role to support decision-making at the national level, and a shift perception that reframes the NMHSs from only being a technical agency to one that enables national development and the prosperity. So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. As mentioned, this guidance document is still being developed, and I'm happy to share more information, I guess, as part of the panel discussion, and we also offline in terms of information that is critical, that is part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moyenda. Very interesting overview. We have one more speaker now. I think Alioune is available in Pretoria right now. Here you go. Sorry for that. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Alioune Badara, a senior climate finance advisor from NORCAP, from the Ecological Monitoring Center, Senegal. Alioune, the floor is yours.
Thank you for convening this meeting with America. I'm sure said NORCAP role in liberation funding for counter service in Africa. Now, mandate as non-profit that this presentation is a good transition during the one led by our colleagues from the movement. It's wrong. Maybe just at the beginning, learn the fact that at the COP 15, Conference of the Parties, I was in Copenhagen in 2009 and known as COP 15. Developed countries committed to a collective goal of mobilizing 100 billion per year by 2020 for climate action in conference. And the COP mandate the standing committee of finance to monitor the progress made in mobilizing those resources. With the support of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, a report was made to monitor the progress to see how far we are in terms of mobilizing the 100 billion per year so-called climate action development. The last report made by standing committees of finance under the council and the OECD demonstrate that in 2021, the resources mobilized were about 809, not far the 100 billion. The average objective of the 100 billion. And under the 80 billion dollar, we have to highlight the fact that the public climate funds coming from Badara and the multilateral account for most of the purpose. It's about 73 billion. When we get the bilateral and the multilateral from the while the private climate finance amount about 15 billion. So as you see, the private climate funding until now is not very high compared to our objective of 100 billion. It means that most of the climate funding is coming from the private finance. And under this, someone already advised that the loan represents the total, about $49 billion, while the grants are about 30%. It means that the climate finance, the objective of $1,000 billion are mainly coming from the loan. It's very important. What does it mean? It means that developing countries are contracting loan to make sure that climate action is implemented. So, because the loan are higher than the grants until for now. The last thing that need to be highlighted the fact that most of the climate finance cover the mitigation As you know, we have the mitigation and adaptation funds. From our developing countries' perspective, adaptation funding is more prioritized, but until now, the mitigation funding is higher than the adaptation. What does it mean from our side as organizations supporting countries in implement climate action in the field? Is that we have to support countries in between the ground coming from the ground. And that's what we're trying to do from NORCAP. Our mission is to improve and to better protect and inform people affected by crisis and climate change. By, among others, providing expertise and developing capacity that enable partners to meet the needs of people confronting complex environments. The role and the strategy we're using to support the national environment services to leverage climate funding is first to fund national action plan for climate services. Collaboration with government and why prime national action plan? Because the first challenge countries are facing is the lack of sustainable powers. Ensuring that the National Adaptation Plan and the NDC indeed climate services. Because as you know, Ghana are not supporting climate services as isolated item, but as supporting countries to implement the national framework. And the most accurate national framework are the national adaptation plan. What we noticed is that given the fact that national environment services are not sitting on the driving seat when it comes to front, map, and NDCs. Unfortunately, most of climate services are not part of action supported by it. So the first action is how to support the national environment services to be part of the frame of national and play a role in the driving seat. Otherwise, it might be a little bit complicated and complex. Indeed, climate services into the national framework and to get support from that. So, first, support them to be part of the national program. The second thing you're trying to do is provide countries with experts to navigate under the complexity of climate finance architecture and proposal development. Why? Because what have we noticed is that most of national environment services have sufficient map experts, but they are struggling to have comprehensive understanding of climate finance architecture and mobilize resources. So that's why NORCAP is supporting countries, both on the national environment services by providing them expertise to work on proposal development and navigate the complexity of the climate finance architecture. What were the outcomes of the strategy and this action? Technical assistance were provided by NORCAP countries aiming at setting up a national implementing entity or desire and implement project and program accelerator. The national and implementing entity are at the interface between the data under the UN metropolis and the countries. So you need the national implementing entity or multilateral implementing entity to get access to climate funding. Two national institutions were also accredited. The support provided by NORCAP CSC in Niger and in Ivory Coast, in Niger, Mali, and Ivory Coast, Pedro. And three funding proposals were approved by the ECF in the allocation funding for the plan. What are the lessons learned from the support provided to the national cabinet services of the countries? The main lesson is that there is a strong need for national cabinet services to build partnership with the alliance. This organization that could support the resource mobilization process outside of the national preserving process. Because the national cabinet services, unfortunately, are not being able to meet the requirement in terms of getting access to the policy funding. It means that they need to build strong partnership with the alliance. Strong partnership and alliance with either the national accredited institution or the multilateral accredited institution. That's why building partnership and alliance will be instrumental if you want the national cabinet services to get access. Otherwise, very basic for ours. Because as I previously said, we have a lot of experts in national cabinet services on the technical side, but unfortunately, they are facing some difficulties in terms of understanding the complexity of the plan. As way forward, we think that we should use the UNFCCC funding mechanism. For example, the GCF readiness funding, because the GCF has several windows of policies. And one of the windows is on the readiness funding. One of the ways forward would be to use the UNFCCC funding mechanism to leverage technical resources in this partnership between the national government service, the private sector, and accredited institutions. Toward the formulation of strong proposals, including culture of participation. The second way forward is to use the bonding mechanism, the next one. Because the counter climate finance architecture based mainly on grants would not be able to meet the requirement in terms of instrumentation of national climate services. That's why it will be critical to make sure that the funding is a blending between the loan and the grant. But the blending between the loan and the grant cannot be done within the camp windows of our bridges. That's why we think that the GCF private sector facility, for example, may be a window to tap into all of high impact investment. If you want to build this partnership within the private sector and the national climate services, one of the ways to do that really proud to make sure get access to the planet mechanism is a mixed company. Thanks you, Gary. This is SOFF our experience with NORCAP supporting the National Housing Services in Africa and working on the ground farms in Confederate after the session.
Thank you very much, and I'm absolutely sure that the support for navigation through the financing processes is urgently needed and more than appreciated. May I please ask you to stay on the stage for the Q&A session? Also, Mnikeli, if you could please come back to the stage. In addition to that, I would like to invite Bradley Riley from the World Bank. He is the risk management specialist there, and Zira Mavunganidze, I think I need support with the pronunciation. So now we have still 30 minutes left for the discussions for Q&A. But before we start with the questions, I would like to ask Bradley and Zira if they have anything to add regarding the presentation, what we have heard. Zira, may I ask you or Bradley, who goes first?
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you to the presentations, both the virtual and in person. So I'd like to pick on 2 points that was highlighted by my colleague Pedro. And he mentioned that he didn't really go into too much detail, but that's sustainable investments and country ownership. Yeah, what does this mean? So we know initial capital investments, the opportunities are there and it's out there. But the problem that we are seeing, so these initial capital investments, the level of infrastructure, ICT development, tech support, staff training. But the issue that we are seeing is that it's not intended for the overall operations of the whole system, the whole process. It's the initial capital investment, it's a starting point. But what is the total cost of the ownership at the end of the day? And what we're seeing is this initial capital investment is not as big as what the total operating costs are in the long term at the end of the day. So yes, these capital investment opportunities are there and they are available, and we can speak more about that. So for example, the African Hydromet program since 2015 has dedicated and supported over $600 million towards African countries, 15 African countries and 4 climate centers, regional climate centers in Africa. So investment opportunities are there, but it's those operational costs that we are seeing a huge gap in, and that has to be country owned, and the country ownership needs to be prioritized there. So institutional budgets need to be included in that. So what is sustainable investment? So capital investment can be given and can be provided in the form of loans and grants, and from the World Bank's perspective, we're going more grant route than these high impact loans that are putting developing nations in more and more debt, which is something that we grapple with, and it's a huge topic of conversation at the time. These opportunities are there, but how do we make that investment sustainable at the end of the day? It's got to include country ownership and country investment as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Zira, anything from your side to add? Maybe you can correct the pronunciation of your name. My apologies for this.
It's very difficult. Okay, these are Mavunganidze from International Fund for Agricultural Development. So it's a UN agency and international financial institution as well. So we support countries, governments in terms with financially to support any projects which are related to agricultural development. So within these projects, we also support as well in mobilizing climate finance as well. So I thought I could just take that maybe for you to understand what some of the organizations like international financial institutions are there over to help countries mobilizing climate finance. So within IFAD, we offer grants and loans to governments and the loans are quite conditional. So within these grants and loans, they can also use them to for any activities that are related to climate adaptation or climate mitigation. So within these funds, we have supported government even in expanding weather station networks. I have some examples of some projects. I mean, we are actually our network is within the six regions. So just to give an example, close by here in Mozambique, we've supported even installation of some weather stations. So this is how we are supporting countries. We also support countries as well with in terms of, we have our funds which we source from donors, and with these funds, we leverage them to get more funds as well from the private sector, and also help governments, for example, if they need to provide more information with the information, how dissemination. So that's how we help farmers with government. And we were also accredited for GCF, for Adaptation Fund, for JEF, and we support governments in terms of developing proposals, capacity building. I've got quite a number of examples, but only because of time, I'll not be able to explain a lot. But I thought maybe for this discussion, just to show you the various maybe the avenues of which government can also obtain finance, climate finance. And then we also support in terms of advocating for increased climate finance for smallholder farmers. For example, we participate in international forums like the UNEF's CCC conference and parties. So these are some of the ways that we help farmers government to secure climate finance. The other, we have also in IFAD flagship project, which is called Adaptation for Smallholder Agriculture Program, where we mobilize funds from different donors. And with these funds, we allocate to different countries depending on the needs. And the government, of course, we consult them, and some of the governments say, no, we want to expand our networks, we want to help in disseminating climate information. So that's how we are supporting governments in terms of mobilizing climate finance. Yeah, just give me an answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to open it up for discussion, for questions, for comments. Tom, I think you were the first one.
Thank you. Tom Smith on the front row. So yeah, Tom Smith there from BTO. I had a comment, concern, I think, really around SOFF and the funding approach. So for many years, we've been providing funding for systems. We don't provide the ongoing funding for operating those systems. My big concern is that the pressure for maintaining the system is going to be on the net services. There's no implication for the private sector to innovate and to continue to support those systems. That's a real concern. SOFF is supposed to be a lot of data. The only funding is going to go into the systems for the private sector, and the private sector companies, especially manufacturers, are going to walk away, as it happened for decades, and the problem is going to be stuck with the net service. It's a real concern for me now. Hopefully something that can be thought of and then change.
I think this is a fantastic comment, Tom. It's twofold. It's the task also for the private sector to be more innovative, to take more about this long-term sustainability. But from my perspective, it's also from the funding organizations. There is a very big focus on the day one capital investment, but not so much on the long-term operating things. It's also difficult from my perspective to create innovative proposal for cooperation, for how to work together in the long run. I don't know who is supposed to.
Pedro, I was going to say so.
Pedro, did you want to respond?
Okay, yeah, thank you. In fact, the private sector engagement is very important for early warning systems. And in cruise project, we have several examples which are outlining in the operational procedure that we have. For example, it is a question how to engage with the telecoms, the mobile operators, and this also is part of the discussion that we are having with the ITU in order to have these networks involved in to disseminate the warnings. So there are this type of examples that we would like to see more in Africa. And we are very open, I mean, to receive project proposals through our implementing partners in which the private sector is involved. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, the telecom part is a small part. In my point of view, it applies for much more sectors, and this is still not solved. I don't know if somebody else would like to comment on this.
Maybe to complement Mr. Facilitator, and there are other actors that are very important for early warning system, as you know, academia, for example. So we should not forget when in the different projects, and by the way, in the cruise project, we are promoting also that any capacity development, also the different universities in the given country or region, they should participate in order to promote the knowledge sharing that they have, and also to increase this knowledge network, etc. So that is one. And we should not, of course, forget the civil society that we are discussing very closely with IFRC in order to reach the last mile. I mean, the civil society are very important because they have also volunteers, such as also the Red Crescents, in order to maintain, as several of the speakers were mentioning, people-centered early warning systems. Over to you.
Yeah, in the perspective of the private sector would be not in the implementing phase, like contribution to resource motivation. And we have one example, for example, is what we call this climate fund. It is a mix of grant model, where we have two million of opportunities. The first is investment facility, and the second is a technical grant in the form of technical assistance. And here the role of the private sector is to be part of the equity funding. And the role of the government actor, like for example, Irish and other actors, these provide support for the technical assistance side. So I think that here again, the role of the private sector, again, just implement affairs, how the private sector will contribute to this form of equity funding, for example, to have the mix of funding as a purpose. So, mix of purpose.
Having the microphone, I take the chance to remind on this question. Do you have an example of how the equity funding from the private sector works? I saw it already on the slides. For me, a concrete example would be helpful, how this works, how the equity engagement then looks like.
Yeah, the role of the private sector will be to provide from the government in part of the equity funding. To make sure that in the implementing phase of the project, the investment match, and then the return of the investment match would, the private sector would benefit from the return of the investment in the people's needs. See, I mean, this is one way the private sector contribute to the resource legislation and the environment in the case of the national highway services, I think that I'm not an example, in terms of instrumentation, but I don't think that the private sector active in the instrumentation side may benefit from the funding provided by the private sector, big private fund, for example, in terms of accounts. Contribute as equity, the equity side of the this kind of project, and benefit in the same way and then we get investment. I mean, we should find a way when it comes to the instrumentation and when it comes to national highway services to be basic. But once again, we have some very good examples and that we have problem when we're talking with that interested in the agriculture and the livestock. I think the challenge on the national side that could be in the pasture in the instrumentation.
Thank you. Highly interesting topic, worth to go deeper into it, to think about it. I think Madagascar was next, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentations. Yeah, regarding climate finance, Madagascar has a lot to say. So Madagascar is one of the country under SOFF, and we have submitted our investment budget last week. And regarding SOFF, I remember I had a discussion with Secretariat and WMO regarding our other estimations. And the basis of the gap analysis, we are supposed to install 3 new update stations. But I said 3 is too much for Madagascar because we are thinking about the operation of the coast. And some secretariat told me, oh, don't worry about that. If this is the need for the general gap, go ahead. Because SOFF is a long-term grant. And WMO and I, for how long? Suppose we have financing from the private sector, for how long? It's about how long-term. This is my question about SOFF. Regarding cruise, Madagascar is also on a cruise regional project for the amount of all the Southern Ocean region. It's about $4 million US. And for Madagascar, it's $150,000 US. You see? So up to now, we have received about maybe $8,000 US. For something to repair our exclusions and then to print the publication of the rainbow. And it seems to me that most of this cruise funding is for the digital management activities. I have the confirmation from the IFAD management unit. This is about cruise. About climate finance, it's true. The method phase has a key role in mobilizing climate finance, but once allocated to the country, it's among the government. It's a role of government to define the priority, and thus that we don't know how much of these climate finance are allocated to the hydronet. For me, maybe about 0.005%. It's true. All of the climate finance go to the response entity. And I've met the country director of the World Bank. I've met the country director of WFP. I've met the head of mission of IMF. All of them recognize that no climate finance with no climate information. But how much of this climate finance are allocated to the Met Office. So what is the job? I think that WMO has a lot to do about this. If WMO recognize that the Met Office has a key role in mobilizing kind of service, please help us and convince all these financial entities to convince that we should give 90% of this climate fairness to the Met Office. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this practical insight, and it seems from the applause that you're not alone with this perception. I'm wondering, as Bruce was mentioned, Pedro, are you still online? Would you like to comment on this, that the funding mainly is not going towards the Met Service, it's going towards disaster response or these directions? Pedro, are you still online?
Yeah, yes, I'm still online. Thank you. Thank you for the question. It is more about the sustainability of funding, right? Because it was not so clear, the mic. Anyway, look, I think
Not really how I understood. The question is not really about the sustainability. It's about the distribution of the available money between the Met Services side and other sides like the disaster response, etc. But only a very small fraction of the available money goes to the Met Services. This is the perception what we have in the room.
okay, look, available money directly, is not the way how the cruise works. Cruise works in providing services through the implementing partners. And the project proposal have to be submitted by the implementing partners in consultation with the Met Services in this case. And also now we are promoting a cooperation framework between Met Services from developing countries with developed countries. So by the way, if any of the Met Services would like to have a sort of partnership with other Met Services in Europe, for example, please to write to me. So in other words, just to summarize, services, yes, capacity development as well. When it comes to the observation, that it is the coordination that we have with SOFF, because they are more specialized for that. But when it comes to the rest of the different elements for early warning system, I mean the cruise funding modalities that I informed to you are available for ODA eligible LDCs and seats. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. I do not know if somebody else, for instance, wants to comment on these points or resolve.
Yeah, I think this one is more relevant to Secretariat because our role as a South African Weather Service are a peer advisor in this area. So I'm not sure if there is somebody from Secretariat here.
Thank you.
Maybe I should have made my points before the response, and that's to add to what my PR from Augusta said. People use the Met Services, climate services, as STEM to develop proposals and go get funding, sometimes with no recourse to the Met institutions. If I have an example where a proposal went up to US on the GCM, and at the board meeting, I'm talking from Ghana, the PR of X, and this proposal emanated from the Environmental Protection Agency and the Agric, and the Water Resources Commission. And at that meeting, somebody who knows me looked at the proposal and said, no, this component should have been done by the Met Service. Where is the Met Service in this proposal? It has to come back and now looking for the Met Service to find some activities within the proposal for the next services to execute, for the proposals to go back. And this is to emphasize the point that sometimes people, and we are talking about national, and the national, you're looking at the World Ministry of Finance and these focal people who may not be the next people, using other means to develop the proposal with them, since they know without climate and the climate services within the proposal will not get the funding. We put the climate services in place, but not dealing with what we call the next services. And so when it comes down the distribution, we are lost out. And that's the point he was trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there is a contribution over there.
Thank you very much. It's two parts really to the question. One, and noting, of course, the views expressed by the PRs or the directors in that sense. There was a proposal, or let me first ask the question to SOFF, whether you as peer review assistance, does that involve the private sector? In other words, when you do go to countries to make the assessments, etc., does that involve the private sector? The second part, I think, is then related. I was going to ask it as a question, but I think Alioune has sort of provided the answer. And so it turns it into a suggestion to the Secretariat in the presentation about, there was a punchline, I think, towards the end that sort of gave the ambition that it wants to turn national met services into climate finance agents who take the lead at national level. I think there's a danger in that, because maybe the PR will say that's not even within the convention to do that. Maybe the answer then, I think, is probably the approach that was presented by Alioune. And maybe the Secretariat can have a look at your framework, if I may call it that, to say how then you empower national net services in line with what the PR was saying in Ghana, to actually engage with those that at national level who are recipients of this funding in a proactive way. But you can't do that unless you know who it is that is receiving funding. The windows of opportunities are very different in a calendar year. Most of them are even outside of the national budget and the processing. So we don't even know whether they're happening, where they're happening, when they're happening, and is the NMS able to interact with all of these processes? Then my last question really is HMER. In answer partially to the question about, the interface in those windows where the private sector has skin in the game of climate finance. One way of doing that is that the HMER, for example, can establish a trust fund. That trust fund is company agnostic. So it's HMEI as a representative of the private sector, which then says when those opportunities open with GCF and the other climate funds, is how then do you contribute? Not as individual companies, but as a collective. That in the end, when the systems get implemented, when the calls for proposals go out, you are the suppliers. So, when you benefit in the end, maybe individually as companies, but as a collective, that is a active private sector player, is able to also put skin in the game to assist and complement the monies that are provided by governments, especially on the grants side rather than the loans side. And I think the insurance sector, or the finance sector in broad terms, that's how they sort of get to that 14 billion contribution, because they understand that they are a beneficiary in the end when they can sell the products for insurance and other means of covering risk, but they put skin in the game. So I'll just propose that as one.
I think this is a good proposal, especially the last point concerning the HMEI. For me, it looks not so easy. I'm not sure if there is somebody who is able to comment on this. Is it, for instance, Moyenda or Tom? I don't know. Okay.
So I recommend Tom mentioned about HMEI.
I just learned he is on the council.
And Moyenda would probably be good to reply to comment too. So
Yeah.
wants to go first, Moyenda.
I fully support the concept of skinning the game for the private sector. There might be a misconception there about the size of private sector companies in the Met Service. HMEI membership is 1,000 Swiss francs, and it's a real challenge to get Met companies to pay 1,000 Swiss francs to be HMEI member. So I think as a concept, our private sector has skin in the game. Absolutely vital. It forces us to innovate, it forces us to collaborate. Private sector companies collaborating together to provide services, key to do more, and being involved in funding that is related to pay value and not pay for delivery of value. That's a big change that needs to happen in the industry. But I'd love to talk about what more HMEI can do, but resources are pretty good. Yeah, I'm the treasurer there, so definitely we chat about that.
Anything from Moyenda?
Moyenda?
Yes, hello. Thank you for that. And I think there's been a lot of very useful points that have been raised on the role that the NMHSs can play. And I think it's important to understand that the guidance document we're developing is not mentioning that the NMHS should be at the front line and the institution that is driving that process, driving the process, because of course the governments already had that in place. What we are recognizing and now trying to push forward is that there's an understanding that they should be part of that process. And in part of that process, there are steps that can be taken in terms of understanding what the funding windows are available and accessing those funding windows, be it GCF or adaptation fund. And how do we better position the NMHSs to be part of that process? I think there was a comment made previously in terms of how much funding can go towards how much the funding. It did break out, but I think what we're trying to develop, at least from the WMO side, is that we recognize that this is something that needs to be worked on. And as part of the efforts of the Development Partnership Office is to try and push that forward and understand that we want to better position the NMHS as if there's a proposal that is being developed, ensuring that if the NMHS is contributing to that, there has to be an understanding of how much funding can be available as part of that. And we've had success with the GCF and had conversations as well with other climate funding institutions as well to also ensure that we're incorporating that same process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have a bit of a challenge with the agenda. There is a very important item next on the agenda, which is lunch. So we are running out of time. I would suggest one more question, comment. Olaf is very active. And after this comment, then I fear we have to close, otherwise we miss lunch.
I think it's an interesting discussion, but in my view, it goes around and around. We don't take the solution. So what is the problem? For instance, in Africa, maybe probably every country in Africa except 4. The big problem is observations. And now in the context of early warning systems, observations, but not so much of clearing the observations, but it's the maintenance, the sustainability. And this goes back to the National Hygiene and Ecological Services. I hear the voices from the National Hygiene and Ecological Services. They need to be involved because we cannot do early warning systems response if we don't have the observation and the monitoring. And so I really want to speak for the National Hygiene and Ecological Services because that's where we get the observations, the data for climate change, for flooding, for all those kind of things. And those are the problems. And so we need to think back about the problems because we're not going to solve early warning systems by all kinds of other things. And I think also
I'm retired, so I can say whatever I want. But, I didn't worry about all these bureaucratic and all the money that goes in administration and bureaucracy. We have so many fundings. We have people sitting in front there. You know, and very little trickles down to the real needs. So I really want to believe that we look at this in that way. Thank you, that's all.
Rudolph. Great comments, and I basically take this already as a closing remark. I'm sure we will have very interesting discussions over lunch together. With this, I would like to thank very much to the speakers, to the panelists, and to all of you for the highly interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Before you run off,
Or-